The Red River National Wildlife Refuge is part of an agency called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we are a federal agency under the Department of Interior. And so our property is a federal property when you come here to visit. And we're located in South Bossier City off of the Arthur Teague Parkway. We have 5 main units, and they're scattered throughout the Red River and Bayou Pierre floodplain. We have Bossier Parish, Caddo Parish, DeSoto, Red River, and Natchitoches Parish we have properties in. Our agency mission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, is conserving, protecting habitat for fish and wildlife and plants, and for the benefit of the public, for continuing future generations, putting aside the property so that we'll have nature. That's the mission of the agency. And then for our particular wildlife refuge unit, protecting habitat for migrating birds, including ducks and shorebirds and songbirds. That was one of our primary missions for this. And then preserving and recreating bottomland hardwood forest and wetlands that were normally found along the Red River and Bayou Pierre floodplains.
The goal itself was to provide wildlife a stopover or a resting place or a nesting habitat, breeding habitat along a river valley that is tremendously rich in natural resources and has been forever. Recognizing those natural resources, recognizing the richness that really defines the Red River region, we recognized that there was a need to have a national wildlife refuge that would preserve some of that. In my experience, and my older brother Skipper was very involved in the formation of Tensaw National Wildlife Refuge in Tensaw and Madison parishes, Big Lake State Wildlife Management area there. And that occurred in the 1980s. And I guess kind of gave us, my brother and I, awareness of the networking within the Fish and Wildlife Service, which was very helpful in getting the Red River National Wildlife Refuge established. But also we recognized the absence here of federal lands dedicated to wildlife management, habitat preservation. So we had a lot of conversations with individuals we knew in the Fish and Wildlife Service in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, and came to the conclusion that the best way to form a national wildlife refuge here would be to seek one through an act of Congress, and that's what we did. Very few national wildlife refuges are formed that way. It's actually kind of a difficult way to get it done because it has to be an act of Congress, it has to be signed by the President of the United States like any other bill. But we saw that as the best way to achieve the goal. So we went to Congressman Jim McCreary, who was the member of Congress that represented most of the Red River at the time in Louisiana, and Senators John Breaux and Mary Landrieu. And through them, we came up with the Red River National Wildlife Refuge Act. Now, getting an act like that written and passed requires a tremendous amount of support from all corners, and we wanted to make sure that we did have full community support. So we formed an organization called Friends of the Red River Refuges, and the board of that organization was made up of members of all different constituencies of the Red River. But through the mid-1990s, Friends of the Refuges did accomplish the writing the bill, introduced into Congress, and we spent a lot of time, as I said, sitting on couches in Washington, waiting to be heard by various people. We had to get in front of the Secretary of the Interior, which at the time was Bruce Babbitt, and I and 4 other members of 4, Chris and Chip Campbell and Whit Carruthers and Jeff Weiss, went to see Secretary Babbitt and got his support, and eventually I was able to meet with President Bill Clinton during the Clinton administration, and reminded President Clinton, who was from Hope, Arkansas, that this was on the Red River, and which he realized, and garnered his support. And So the bill was eventually passed in Congress and signed by President Clinton, and it became the Red River National Wildlife Refuge Act in 2000. And we then had a refuge on paper. We didn't have a single square inch of dirt.
So here in Bossier City, we call this the headquarters unit, because this is where the office is and the staff is located. We have a visitor center, an education center. We have hiking paths. We have Oxbow Lake. And then over on the Shreveport side, we partnered with the city to acquire and manage the property for C.B. Dixon. A lot of people call that a park, but now it's a wildlife refuge unit. The Visitor Center and Education Center is one of the two buildings that we use to do programs with the public for visitors to come here and learn about the refuge, learn about animals and plants. I do programs with school groups. Pretty much any group that's interested in learning about nature, they can contact us.
The headquarters was once part of Sunflower Plantation. It was owned by the Dixon family, who donated part of that plantation to the city park. It's across on the Caddo side. And here on the Bossier side of the river, or currently on the Bossier side of the river, they sold a refuge, some land to be the headquarters in Lake Caroline, and was a tremendous location. We couldn't have asked for a better location than this one.
Property is open daylight, sunrise to sunset. That's when you can come visit us. But we do at least one night program a year, and we'll have a campfire and little spotlights to walk the trails, and you learn about animals and how they survive winter time. And that's also a fundraiser for our nonprofit Friends group. Since we're a federal agency, there are some things that I can't purchase, like lunch for volunteers, or if we have a summer camp, snacks for the kids. So we have a group of citizens who formed a group, a nonprofit that's called Friends of Red River National Wildlife Refuge. And they do fundraising for us, and they help with different activities. And that's one way you can participate. Join the Friends group. You can volunteer, you can donate money, and all of it is put back here, usually doing habitat work or education type projects for families and kids. We're just a place, really, truly, it is for wildlife, but it's also for families and individuals who want to learn and like nature. So some of our properties are open to hunting. The headquarters unit and C.B. Dixon and Shreveport are not open to hunting, but we are open to fishing. You can, if you have a canoe or a kayak, you can bring it out on our lake. Once in a while we'll have an event where we have kayaks and canoes that you can borrow. And coming up in the summertime, we have youth camps for kids, and that's a great opportunity. Usually I focus my camps on birds, learning about birds and learning about nature, but we also do a camp where we do recreation, outdoor recreation skills, and we'll do archery and skeet shooting and canoeing. And so we're just trying to provide opportunities for the public to, recreation outside, get people outside. It's a healthy way. Being outside in green space is really healthy for you. It's good for your mind, your body, and your soul. So anyways, come on out. Another activity that lots of people like to come here for is bird watching and nature observation. So we do have a bird list. You can get this on our website, or we should have some publications here. And there's over 400 species of birds that you can find. Of course, it's through the 4 seasons. and some of it depends on habitats where you can find some of the birds. But that is one of my favorite hobbies that I do on my own free time, is bird watching. But I also do it with a biologist background. I also do bird counts and do surveys for birds. And if you really like birds, that might be something you might be able to volunteer with and help me with. So we have documented visitors from all 50 states. And then we get over 200,000 visitors a year. And I think we're up to 25 or 30 countries, all of Europe. We've had visitors from like Jamaica, Australia, Sweden, we had Finland, China. So we get visitors from around the world.
In the dark, when we're all asleep, millions of birds pass over this corridor of wetland that is the Red River. And it's those numbers, remember, is the other reason we formed the Refuge. Those millions and millions of unseen birds, those millions of unseen creatures and plants out there that most people don't notice are flourishing now after 20 years of the Red River National Wildlife Refuge. And that is a reward that's just invaluable. And to look at it today and realize where we were in the 1990s, and then to see these refuge units now, developing wildlife habitat, holding migratory birds and resident wildlife and plants, is tremendously rewarding, because it has succeeded really way beyond our dreams. And it provides a real home for wildlife, and also a real home for people that are interested in nature and wildlife and the environment here in Bossier Parish. In the ensuing 20 years since 2000, we've seen the refuge mature. A lot of the trees we planted have grown into forest. The Spanish Lakes unit is one of those I'm referring to, but there's very nice developing forests on the other tracks as well, the Bossier unit.
COVID, like every place, we were shut down. The buildings were shut down, staff were sent home. The property itself, though, stayed open, which was very unique, because when people were shut in and couldn't go to work and go to school, they were looking for outlets, something to do with their time. And lots of people discovered the refuge. They would come here with their bikes and go hiking and, stay socially distanced apart, but, they got to enjoy nature and fresh air. And that helped with the stress of the COVID pandemic. Eventually, we were able to start doing some programming. And one of the programs that I started before COVID, and it was perfect planning on my part, without knowing about COVID coming, but I was planning an outdoor story trail. And the story trail is a place where we post a book each month along this trail. And it was perfect opportunity for you to be outside, walking and reading and learning. And the story trail project's gonna go on into 2023. And hopefully it's perfect for all ages. Adults sometimes go, oh, it's a story book. It's for little kids, but it's not just for little kids. We make ranger connections. So I can't walk the trail with you, but I make these connection cards that go along with the book, and I ask questions, and we link to websites, and you learn about the animals and plants that are in the story. So you're actually reading a story book, but at the same time you're learning more about Louisiana and about nature. So the Story Trail project is for everyone to participate, but kids in general really like it. And I guarantee you're going to learn at least one new fact that you didn't know about by going down the story trail. We are very glad to be getting a Caddo Indian dugout canoe. In 2017, the canoe was discovered by some people who were just paddling down the Red River outside of Bossier, Louisiana. In 2022, we hope to have the exhibit up, and the canoe will be placed in the exhibit. And what's really unique about this canoe is it's very long and narrow. It's about 34 feet long, which is really long. It's like two canoes, butt up to each other. And it was made out of bald cypress wood. The scientists were able to determine that, and that's a cool story too, learning about everything about the ancient peoples that used to live here in Louisiana.
The longest Native American watercraft ever discovered was found on the Red River just a few years ago. At 32 feet, it is the longest in one piece ever found anywhere in North America. Incredible. Hundreds of years old. Made from a single cypress log. No one knows its provenance. It had washed down the Red River and was deposited on the bank by a flood, probably the flood in 2015. Discovered by a couple of arrowhead collectors and donated to the state of Louisiana if we could get it off the riverbank before the river came up and the river was rising. So with only a few hours to spare before the river rose and washed this thing away again, we were able to marshal a crew, build a crate around it, and get a bulldozer in there and very carefully pull this ancient relic out, and it's now being preserved at Texas A&M. They have a lab, a ship preservation lab, and it'll be brought here to the Refuge where it'll be on display forever in a preserved condition. The important thing about it, this is really why I dug out, why am I talking about a piece of archaeological item or artifact or a piece of Caddoan history? And what does that have to do with the National Wildlife Refuge? It has everything to do with it. As I said, the reason for this National Wildlife Refuge is to preserve this rich resource that the Red River is. It's also to educate the people that live here about what is special about our home on the Red River. What's special about it is the same thing that's special about it to the people that built that dugout canoe so many hundreds of years ago. That this is a rich environment. It's fish and it's waterfowl and it's the trees and plants that support all the other wetland wildlife and wetland plants and ecosystem is something that is that old. It's as old as that 32-foot canoe. And that they could build this ship, that they had such a tremendous and wealthy society, a successful society living here, just as we live here today, on both sides of the river, in Caddo and Bossier Parish. It's just evidence of the value of the river and of the place that we call home. This dirt underneath our feet is not just dirt. It's rich, productive soil that produces an environment that the Refuge has preserved a portion of, and the Refuge celebrates. So the dugout is symbolic to why we need to preserve habitat on the Red River. And it carries with it the same mystery that the river does, because we know, because the archaeologists, the anthropologists tell us who was here, and the Caddoan culture tells us, and their oral history tells us who was here and how they lived. But we can feel and touch this, and it's tangible evidence that those people were successful here, and that we need to be successful here ourselves. We need to appreciate the river as well. So it's a wonderful opportunity. The state of Louisiana was very gracious to donate it to the Refuge, and it'll be here hopefully in 2022 for everyone to see and enjoy.